Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer. On today's episode, I have a fellow transplant Minnesotan by the name of Josh Leve. So Josh started the Association of Fitness Studios, AFS, and it has since kind of rebranded into the Fitness Business Association. So you notice something I said there, it's an association. So it's a really interesting concept, and it's been around pretty much since the beginning of clubs, but a member pays a yearly due, and then they get access to a whole bunch of benefits, education, that kind of stuff. And so it was a different take on a way to support the industry. And there was really nothing at the time, so Josh decided to go out and create it for kind of these boutique small studios, and it has grown immensely since then. So we talk all about that in the journey. Josh is a fellow entrepreneur, and so the company is entirely bootstrapped. And so we kind of talk through some of the challenges that it takes to build a company. And then we also get into, I call it the 10,000 foot view of the industry. So Josh gets to see a lot of the different pockets of the industry because of the association, right? And we were able to talk about, like, has the industry recovered since COVID? Like, where is it going? And like, what are the best people in the industry doing? So we cover that and the entire journey in this episode. I know you're going to love this episode with Josh Leve. Josh Leve, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast.
Thank you, Trevor. Happy to be here. Good to see you again.
It's good to have a fellow Minnesotan in the house.
That's right. We were talking about how it's 65 degrees and sunny here in the middle of March, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. As I look out the window and I see a snowstorm happening, but it's what we sign up for, right?
That's the truth. The seasons.
Right. Sunny weather is just a plane ride away. Or May,
that's true.
Whatever. So, all right. So we've chatted a lot in the past, but I haven't been able to catch up with you lately. So this is going to be a lot of fun to really get your perspective on the industry, because you do have a unique kind of umbrella on the industry. But I want to kind of go back to the beginning for those people that don't know. You decided to start like an association at the beginning. Most people, when they get in the industry, don't like want to create an association. Maybe they create like a coaching program or they do something else, but an association is different. So take me back on some of the thought process. I know you kind of have a pedigree of the association piece, but talk me through the thoughts in your head when you were kind of contemplating this idea.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So yeah, the pedigree, it's funny. I did a podcast with Matthew Janicek over at Escape Fitness, and he actually coined the term fitness industry royalty, which I thought was very kind words. I don't know if I would put myself ever on a pedestal like that. I'm try to stay as humble as possible. But my background goes many, many years back. I'm a third generation fitness association founder. My grandfather started the National Court Clubs Association way back in the day, back when tennis clubs and racquetball clubs were really kind of the it thing to do in this new world called health and fitness, right? And then my father came along after that and helped start a company called URSA with John McCarthy. He was actually one of the founding employees. And we like to say his claim to fame was he created the URSA trade show, which he did with John McCarthy, and ran that thing for almost 30 years. And anybody that goes to URSA now, that is his baby. That was his baby. Now, he sadly passed in November of 2021, but URSA still lives on. I'm going to be heading out to URSA next week. So, I'm excited to be there and to see everything. It's got a special place in my heart. And then, of course, as I was growing up, I had the opportunity to understand a little bit about how associations work, what they mean to their members, what they mean to their sponsors. And so after I graduated college, I was working in the health and fitness industry on the business side for health clubs in the Chicago market, where I live downtown. Was the GM of several affluent high-end clubs in the Lakeview area, the Old Town area, if people know downtown Chicago. And ultimately, gosh, when I think back in my timeline, if I can go back in time, that was probably around 2010 2010-ish, where I was seeing a lot of my trainers and instructors that were leaving, and they were looking to go start their own thing. They had this drive of wanting something more. They didn't want to work within the confines of a health club, in these four walls. They wanted to be their own bosses, and they had their clients or the members of the club whispering in their ear saying like, why don't you go out and do this thing on your own? You can get a credit card or a rich uncle, or I'll help support you, and you can open up a storefront and get some equipment in there and have a functional training studio up and running, in no time. Well, yeah, that all sounds great, but ultimately these people didn't have, in my opinion, the best business sense to ultimately become incredibly successful. They were great at what they did, but the business sense was lacking. So long story short, I went to my father as he was just doing some consulting work at the time. And I said, hey, what if I created an association that connects this new wave of entrepreneurs, the solopreneur, we can kind of call them now, that want more from themselves and from their training business aside from, working in the health club. They want to start their own thing. What if there was an URSA for them? Because at the time, URSA wasn't focused on them. It was the big box clubs, the 24-hour fitnesses, the Equinoxes, the stuff like that. And he said, that's a great idea. We got a few people together, and it kind of blossomed from there, and we created the Association of Fitness Studios that launched at the end of 2013, and from there just grew it, and it's been a roller coaster ever since, and still is. And ultimately, once we created the Association of Fitness Studios, we ran that, and as you well know, Trevor, when you start a company, everything goes perfectly to plan, right? There's never anything that goes wrong, right? I did not have this gray hair when I first started this company 10 years ago. That is for sure. I was a spring chicken in my early 30s. So, things change now that I'm 43. But when starting a company, crazy things happen. And sometimes you got to have the wherewithal to understand where the industry is going. You got to get lucky. You got to get aligned with the right team. You got to understand a lot of different things. And we got fortunate. And one of the things that we did through the pandemic was we took a really hard look at ourselves internally and said, who have we created this association for? And when you create an association, you do it for a variety of things. You do it for the members who pay an annual membership fee. And it's not a lot. It's a couple $100 a year, sometimes less than that, and sometimes more than that, dependent on what the benefits are and the value proposition. But we created the association for studio owners. And so what we ended up finding was that we identified our market as anybody who had a studio, but that at the time wasn't something that was clearly defined. So who is a studio? And the word boutique that everybody likes to use now wasn't a thing of the past. So if I'm a gym owner, should I join the Association of Fitness Studios? If I'm an aspiring studio or gym owner, do I join the Association of Fitness Studios if I don't have a brick and mortar location right now? And so there was a lot of confusion as far as who should join, who shouldn't. Should a gym owner, should a trainer that wants to start but didn't know? So we said, let's stop all this confusion, rebranded the company to the Fitness Business Association, which cast a wider net, still kept us underneath the umbrella of fitness business, and allowed us to reach just more people with a better understanding that this is really for everyone. And so there's that one segment where the association model is for your members who pay you an annual membership fee, or in the model that we have for the FBA, it's twice a year. But then you also have all of your sponsors, which help make up 90% of your revenue, which is going to be the sponsors that have a product or service to sell that they want to get into a certain market. Now, the great thing about starting the Association of Fitness Studios was at the time, we were the only company that was solely focused and dedicated on studios. I mean, we built up a database of 50, 60,000 at that time. Now it's over 80,000. And we had sponsors who were really actively looking to target these small businesses that nobody else had a database of. And so we had that. And of course, now we still have it, and we've grown it since. And so it was very valuable to a lot of these heavy metal companies, the big like Life Fitnesses and Matrix and those companies. And it was also very valuable to a ton of the up and coming software and technology companies that had a lot of things that they could help fitness studio owners with that would save them time. It would automate certain processes. And so there was a lot of focus on that to help drive revenue as well. And so now as we've rebranded, it's really kind of stayed relatively the same. Our mix has has definitely changed a little bit. We focus a lot of our education for studio owners, for gym owners, but there's also a ton of education that we offer right now that is for a trainer, an instructor, or a coach that is an independent owner, might be training out of their virtual studio at home, might be working out in a health club that, they just want to figure out how to better serve their clients, how to become a better practitioner. And we offer education in a variety of different ways for those people as well throughout the industry. So it's been a journey to get to this point, for sure. As any entrepreneur will tell you, when I look back over almost 10 years ago, it truly is, the old adage where as an entrepreneur, you jump off the cliff and figure out how to fly on the way down, right? It's like, hey, I've got an idea. You got to be kind of crazy to be an entrepreneur, right? And really, you are trying to solve a problem that exists, but that nobody else has the balls to go out there and do. And you say, oh, I can do it, right? I know what I can fix that. And so you go out and you set off to do it. And, your vision of where you want to get to never really matches up in the way that you anticipate it being. And you ultimately have to pivot. You have to change directions many, many times to get to where you want to go. And even when you do think you're about to get there, you ultimately have to go back to the drawing board and rethink, what it is that you're selling and what the audience wants. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot that's going on right now.
So when we go back to this idea of an association, right? People that are probably newer to the industry or the smaller business owner probably don't associate as much with like an association as like your Lifetime or your Equinox, these kind of big racquetball clubs. Like that was a big part of that. And so early on, like what was the like value prop for those people that like, this is really new and I don't really know what an association is. Maybe I know what a coaching program is, but how is this different? So explain to me a little bit of like the value prop early on and what kind of you were selling people with an association.
Yeah. And it's a few different things. One, it's credibility and it's legacy and it's prestige is one of the things. There's an ability as an association for people to understand that you are joining a group, you're joining a community of like-minded individuals that all share a common goal, and that's to become better at what they do and to become more successful and ultimately live the life that they want. And so one of the things you're able as an association is to, number one, get a ton of education. Like the education isn't coming from one point of view. It's not coming from me. I'm not a coach. So I'm not sitting here being like, hey, this is what you should do. We are able to go out to the masses within the industry, bring in educators from all over the place that are incredibly successful in what they're doing and be able to showcase their success to our members. So through any type of a conference, when you go to an in-person conference or our virtual conferences, you're met with educators from all over the industry that all have a unique point of view, and you're able to pinpoint what you want to take from those presentations and implement it into your business. That's the same thing that happens within an association. You have access to so much information, a wealth of education, a wealth of information, the ability to talk to different individuals, and it gives you a plan, a roadmap, is you're ultimately guided in the right direction. And through that, we also have access to educators who are pre-vetted. Anybody can go on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok these days and sell training and coaching and consulting. Who the heck are you supposed to trust? You have no idea. There's coaches all over the place that are selling something. The great thing about an association is that we can pre-vet companies as well. So we're not saying we're the end all. We are the hub for which allows you the ability to connect to more educators, to find the tools that you need to become successful, from the softwares you need, from the equipment that you need, all underneath an umbrella to get the discounts that you need, the market research that you want. All this information, the trends that are happening in the industry. It's not just, hey, sign up for my services and pay me $2,000 a year, and you're going to figure out how to sign up clients that pay you $2,000 a month. That's not what it's about. It's a well-rounded amount of education that comes with the membership fee. That is a very nominal fee as compared to a lot of the coaches and consultants and stuff out there in the industry. So that's kind of the umbrella approach.
So, early on, what were some of the biggest struggles that you had? Looking at it now, kind of hindsight is always 2020, but, was there anything that what you know now, you would go back in the beginning and change the way you approach stuff?
Yeah, gosh. Yeah. So there always is, right? And you can probably feel the same way. Ultimately, one of the biggest challenges, something we just talked about, how do you sell an association? right? Because that is the biggest challenge, because it wasn't something, the big box guys that attend IRSA, you're talking about CEOs, people with MBAs, a lot of times, and they understand association because they've been a member of IRSA for a long, long time. So they got it. This new wave of entrepreneurs was not privy to what an association can provide. So it was constantly a challenge to educate on what does an association do? Why is this something that I would need? How is this different? What value does this provide to me? And being able to clearly identify and explain not just what the features are of what an association does, but ultimately the benefits from the angle of how will this change my life? How will this make things easier for me? And really dialing into that instead of being like, hey, we have this, we have that, we have this, which a lot of times, a lot of businesses fall into the trap of. It's like, hey, we've got all these amazing features. Well, that's great, but how does that actually go into impact my business? What's the long-term effect that should have? And I talk about that all the time when I travel around the country and present, is focusing more so on your benefits and not so much the features, because everybody has features. It's just how you sell that's better. So I think any business is always trying to refine their selling message and optimize, their conversion rates and looking at the data and trying to figure out how they can improve. And I mean, to be completely honest and blunt, it got to a point where we're like, all right, we need to change the name of the company. You know what I mean? Just a few short years ago and change the model completely, because that's just one of the things we saw that was happening. It's like, we need to make a big change here for us to take a step or two back, but ultimately drive the business forward. And that's what we did.
My favorite thing about Coach Catalyst.
My favorite thing about Coach Catalyst.
One of the things I love most about Coach Catalyst.
There are lots of things I love about Coach Catalyst.
And the reason why I love Coach Catalyst is that
the accountability off the back of that
is simplicity.
The support is amazing.
It allows me to give so much of me to my clients.
The drip feeding of content.
I can schedule lessons for my clients in advance.
Game changer for freeing up time.
It gives me my time back.
It's so simple and so easy.
Hi, I'm Kane, the founder of Coach Catalyst, the #1 accountability and communication software on the market today. We help coaches just like you keep their clients accountable and scale their business beyond what they've ever been able to do before. So if that sounds like something you want, let's take a look at how we can help. So Coach Catalyst was built on the 4 C's of coaching. Those are content, communication, community, and consistency. So for content, you need to go beyond just workouts and deliver the whole experience for the client so they get the results they deserve. For communication, you need to own your communication. If you don't own the communication, you don't own the client. So make sure you stop texting clients and use a centralized platform. For communities, get off of Facebook groups and take ownership over your social group with Coach Catalyst communities. And for consistency, the foundation of all results for clients, we took the best-selling book Atomic Habits and built all these fundamentals right within our app that's going to guarantee to get your clients the best results possible. If you want to start using the 4 C's with your clients, content, connection, community, and consistency, make sure you run over to Coach Catalyst and start a free trial today.
So, I mean, I 100% agree with this idea of, talking about the benefits versus the features. It's easy to talk about features because it's this thing or this thing or this thing. This is what we do. This is what we do. This is what we do. But how you can translate that into benefits, now you really start to show how that person is going to, quote unquote, benefit, right, from your services. So I love that. Going back to the beginning, how did you get traction early on? Right? I mean, you had some contact in the industry just from being in the industry, but how are you able to get, let's say, those first 20 studios signed up?
One of the things that I pride ourselves on within the association, and even back at the beginning, was our relationships in the industry. We were fortunate to have my father and myself for, attending IRSA and getting ingrained in the industry and meeting with people when I would attend. Before I even started the company, I know, and this is held true to this day from how we market. We don't do a lot on social media. We don't do a lot of promoting on social media because our partnerships are so strong. We are able to market what we do. And we've actually built these into our sponsorship programs to give sponsors a nice hefty discount if we're able to access their databases to market our programs. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But what we were able to do is when I was thinking, okay, who do we want our founding partners to be, our founding sponsors? We started the company without any investors. And still, I'm 100% owner of the company. We don't have a single investor. Ultimately, our investors are our sponsors. Those are the ones that we need to produce results for. And we've got a ton of sponsors. So it helps. But at the very beginning, when we were talking about, all right, who do we need to go out to gain traction? And it became, okay, who do we have great relationships with that have huge databases that are able to understand our value prop and how important it is to the industry, that will go out and market what we have internally to their databases. And it allowed us to be able to connect with some companies, major certifying organizations. The American Council on Exercise was one. And that's ultimately how it started, building in great relationships, showcasing that this is not something that it's not a product that we're trying to solve, right? It's not a product we're trying to sell. This is an association that is good for the industry, all about supporting fitness studio owners and aspiring studio owners, really gym owners at the time, hence the name change several years later, grow their businesses and be successful on their own. Information, education, market research, a value proposition that was good for everyone. And so that was the pitch that we made. And through that, and through a strong referral program and strong word of mouth, ultimately kind of got us the springboard that we needed to get out there. And I will tell you what, any young entrepreneur out there, anybody in business, one of the best things that we did, and we continue to do it to this day, is we scream from the trees when things are going well. So any new partner that comes on gets a press release out into the industry. And we've got a industry database of not only, PR people in the industry, a press list, but we've also got PR lists of people, some major newspapers that I've given quotes to over the many, many years, Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post. I mean, the list goes on and on. And whenever a partner comes on, we scream it from the mountaintops. And so getting out a consistent stream of things going really, really well within your group, your business, your association, really showcases to the industry, to the masses, that things are on a roll. And it's really something that we've continued to do since then. But I mean, those early on partnerships and figuring out how to really, craft a message that was going to be something that could be received well by the people that were going to ultimately get it in their inbox was key. And I'll tell you this, it continues to change every single year. There's a new shift in how we market and what we say and what's the theme of our virtual conferences and the association. And it never changes. I mean, Trevor, it's like you build out a new website with a brand new marketing message. And then all of a sudden you look at it 6, 7, 8 months later and you're like, oh, that needs to change.
Right.
It already feels outdated. So much has changed since the beginning that we're a completely different company. Different company. But those early on partnerships and the partnerships we continue to create now are a key to our success.
And what was the price point at the beginning? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh. Great question. I think the price point at the beginning, I think it was $199 a year.
That was going to be my guess. I was thinking it was in the 100 to 200 range. So
yeah.
And did you find that being we're not like high ticket by any means, right? That's very actually low ticket. And so did you find it hard kind of moving people? All right. So, you had the trust from partners. So they're like, hey, now you kind of augmenting that trust into their users or their clients. Did you find it hard for them to then adopt this idea? Because really at that time it was still like an idea. We're bringing all these people together. Here's what we're going to give you, X, Y, and Z. My guess is at the time you didn't have this like huge database of education where they're like, hey, and then you're going to get like these 1,000 videos on how to run a better business.
Right.
So was there some friction there or did you find like people bought into the vision and the dream fairly easily?
100% friction. Absolutely. Yeah, it was, I'll be completely honest. It wasn't like, hey, here's what we created and we had a flood of members. No, I mean, we got a great uptick and it started the process, as I mentioned before, of us on our way. But absolutely, you had to learn so much. And it's like I had a good business sense of what people wanted. But building out a website, building out an association website, building out any website takes a lot of time and work. And I remember the months and months and years leading up to the launch of the website and looking back at it just to seeing how elementary it was. Yeah, there was friction at first. And so we had to quickly take a look internally and say, all right, what we have works for some, but not the masses. So what do we need to do? How do we, get more education? How do we get a better onboarding experience? How do we get a better user experience, member experience? How do we, craft the education curriculum so that people understand everything we're doing? Absolutely, we were met with friction. It's one of the things that as any entrepreneur, you always see that happening. There are certain elements of your business that are working really well, and then there's other areas of your business that aren't. And for me, it was going back through all the different processes and saying, all right, this is working, this is working, this is working. These aren't working. I'm going to focus on these because we need to fix this and we need to fix it fast. And that's what we did. And we did that probably within the first 12 to 14 months and relaunched with a completely new website, completely different value prop. We looked at all the education. We had at that time enough education built up to kind of restructure how we offered the education, what the education was. And that helped immensely. That was kind of like, got through the initial, oh my God, what is it that we created? How do we keep this thing going? And from there, we got, kind of to the next level of business. And I'll say along the way, I lost a business partner. I mean, when I started the company, I was a co-founder in the company. I had a great friend of mine growing up from middle school who the two of us had, always talked about starting a company. It was a dream of ours. And when we launched the company and we had some initial success, but not to the success that he was hoping, things got really rocky, as anybody who's been through a business divorce, as I call it, can understand. And I knew that this was not going to be something that all of a sudden overnight we had immediate success. A lot of people have been in business 10, 15 years and they just start to find significant success. And they're like, oh, wow, you must have, been doing great from the beginning. No, we were a 15-year overnight success, right? And I knew that's ultimately what was going to happen with this company. It wasn't going to blow up like gangbusters in a year. It was going to take time. And he started making very, very bad business decisions that ultimately forced a very messy breakup. And I had taken full control of the company and buying him out. So that's kind of really, I'll tell you the truth, ever since that happened, the company just started going like that. So, better decisions were made, bringing on the right people, as I mentioned in the beginning, and just starting to make sound business decisions based off of the data that we were receiving.
So, I mean, the company was bootstrapped from the beginning, right? I would assume there was a level of capital that both you and your partner had to kind of put in to get things off the ground. And did you hire right away, or were you guys doing the majority of the kind of day-to-day operations?
No, we did most of the day-to-day operations. There was a lot of skin in the game from the two of us. I mean, we had a little bit from our founding sponsors and partners, but ultimately it was us. I remember, it's funny, I was just thinking about this the other day. I remember sitting in my little apartment in Chicago, at my kitchen island and on the phone trying to sell memberships, and it's not like our memberships were all that expensive either. So you can understand how many I would have to sell. And so I remember trying to figure it out, trying to take, the partners that we had on board and figure out a way to kind of combine different offers and make things that sounded enticing. And we tried absolutely everything. It's crazy to go back in history and look back at my old emails from like 2013, 2014. It's like a different point in time that just feels so archaic and, part of a history book these days. But we did pretty much everything on our own, just like anybody who bootstraps their own business really does these days. I mean, we were trying to market it through companies. We were trying to figure out the creative. We were trying to leverage, online websites like 99 Designs at the time for people to develop our creative that we could send via email. We had an IT director that I ended up firing once, my business partner left and brought on somebody else new who's been with me since that time. So it was really the two of us for the first 12, 14 months. When he left, that's when I realized I need help. And so I was able to offset some of what he was being paid to find the right people that I needed. And ultimately from there we grew. And I will say, since he's left 10 years or so ago, 9 years, the two people that I brought on to replace him are still with me today. So, which is pretty cool.
As a coach that runs challenges, I needed my life back. I had stuff all over the place. A Facebook group for community interaction, Google Sheets for check-ins and measurements, and was drowning in email communication. As my challenges grew past just a handful of people, I started to notice clients were falling through the cracks. I began researching virtual assistants because I just couldn't manage it all. And truthfully, the client experience was going down the drain. Luckily, a friend recommended Coach Catalyst and just told me to trust her. I'm sure glad I did. Now I can run my challenges with 2 or 200 clients with just a few clicks. The lessons get delivered on the right days, the accountability happens automatically, and most importantly, the communication is all in one spot. I even created 2 new challenges from the Coach Catalyst library. Best part, didn't have to change a thing. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to log into all the apps I needed. Now I log in and my dashboard tells me who needs a shout out and who needs a kick in the butt in about 15 seconds. I feel like a huge weight is lifted off of my shoulders. I can finally spend my time coaching again instead of worrying about all the admin work. Do your brain a favor and get Coach Catalyst.
So was there a point where you felt like you maybe got a break, where it was like something happened where it was like, okay, I feel like this is less of a uphill battle. Maybe something happened. You feel like you got to push or anything like that. Were there any big breaks that you got kind of early on that kind of propelled that next level of success? Or has it just kind of been a constant, I don't want to call it grind, but that's kind of what it is.
It is a grind. And I wish I could pinpoint it and say, I remember in 2015 when this one sponsor came on or when this thing happened, it catapulted our success. But it's not that way in the association business right now. It's a grind. It's a grind behind the scenes all the time. And it still is a grind. I mean, we're still growing and still trying to figure out how we can grow faster. It's just a little different now. But I remember every new sponsor we had to fight for. But the great thing is when we were out there and once we made that big shift in the website design, more and more people started taking us seriously. One of the things that we really prided ourselves on back then was our market research in the industry. When we started doing a lot of really good market research, that really shifted the focus to a lot of sponsors out there and even our members, because nobody else was doing market research on fitness studios. IRSA, of course, is always out there doing their reports on the state of the industry and, health club data. We went out with great detailed market research for the industry. We had to educate our members on how this is important, how you use it. But what it allowed us to do is become really credible on the side of the sponsors who loved what we were doing, got them insight into a brand new market that was exploding. Now, keep in mind, when we started the Association of Fitness Studios, this was before Orange Theory. This was before all these, 9 Round and Soul Cycle and all these other companies, these boutique fitness, as you will. That really wasn't our focus. I had no idea this industry was going to explode in the way that it did. I actually was talking to a former potential investor when I was looking at doing investment about a year or so ago. And he reached out to me and we talked and he goes, Josh, I've been following your progress and your success over the last 8-9 years. And he goes, I just want to commend you. He said, you really had the wherewithal to understand the pulse of the industry and where it was going. And you were able to create a product that spoke to the industry in a way that nobody could have ever foreshadowed and understood where it was going. And I said, well, thanks. I appreciate that. Maybe, I also got lucky too, being like, yeah, this looks like something that might happen. I would have never have known that would have exploded the way that it did. And I'm excited to have been at the kind of the beginning of that. And now, of course, there's a bunch of different companies that are out there supporting fitness studios. And so it was nice, but yeah, it was a grind. I mean, it's always a grind, no matter what. I mean, it's rare that a company finds a significant amount of success if they can pinpoint one thing. I mean, a company like ClassPass, for example, used to be a company called Classtivity, and ultimately they switched their business model to ClassPass and created something completely different and were able to grow that company and of course sell it to MindBody years later. But, for us, we're seeing now, since we shifted from the AFS model during the pandemic to the FBA, we are seeing a significant amount of growth, more so than we've seen really within the first 8 years of the company that's happening right now. So we're excited about that, but it's a grind. I wouldn't say there was one thing I could pinpoint.
Right. So you said you've had conversations about investment, and so bringing on outside money. Why not take on some outside money? Do you feel like you just maybe don't have a great place to put it to work, or it wouldn't necessarily benefit you, or don't want to give away, portion of the company? What's the thought process behind that?
It's one of those things as a business owner I constantly wrestle with. I have a lot of friends when I lived out in California. So I'm originally from Chicago. met my wife in Chicago, and then we moved out to California, really the Silicon Valley area, really for multiple reasons. One, for my company to get well connected in the software and tech space, because I wanted to be. And two, because she was doing some graduate school out there for physical therapy. But while I was there, one of my best friends is a CEO of a tech company in Silicon Valley. I won't mention the company's name, but we would talk often. He was a really good support mentor for me. And the amount of stress that he was under all the time and continues to be all the time, he would always tell me, he goes, Josh, are you making a good salary? And I'd say, yeah. He goes, are you happy? Do you have time with your family? Can you do whatever you want, whenever you want? And I said, yeah. He goes, then it's not worth it. He's like, it just, for you, where you are, where your company is, for you to take on investment, sure. But he goes, it's up to you. If you've got that and you can wake up and you are your own boss, you don't have to answer to anybody. He says, it's not worth a $5, $10 million, $2 million investment. He's like, it's just not. He's like, having that freedom mentally for your own mental health is a lot more valuable than me having to wake up and I've got to answer to like 10 different investors that are all significantly invested in my company. And so I took that to heart and I said, you know what? This is something that I understand is going to be a grind. It's going to take me a little bit more time to get to the, multi-million dollar company that I ultimately want to grow the company to. But I'm okay with that. I can wake up every morning. I answer to nobody other than our current sponsors who really are, as I mentioned before, like our investors. I mean, we've got some big sponsors that need to see performance. And so I realized, well, maybe I don't have like one or two investors that have invested a lot of money, or any VCs or stuff like that. But I've got a lot of little investors that make up a big amount of money that I need to make sure they see a good, healthy ROI. So I kind of shifted my mindset to like, well, yeah, nobody tells me what to do, but I need to show performance for the companies that have bought into what we offer. And so that was really it. And at that moment, I just decided, it's going to be a grind. And I work on my financial data all the time and understand what I need to do, where we need to go, what needs to happen for us to get from this number to that number in 2, 3, 4, 5 years and, try to hit that. And then, of course, keeping my team involved as well is something that I actively do, too, to make sure that we hit those numbers. So, yeah, it's a great question, though, Trevor. I thought a lot about it. And sometimes when you're having one of those down moments, you're like, maybe I should go back and think about bringing on an investor. I could use that money for a lot of different things here, there, and the other place. But who knows in the future? Maybe at some points I'll look to do it. But right now, I've ultimately decided not to.
Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of approaches it a little bit different. And one way we've always thought about it. So Coach Catalyst, we're completely bootstrapped as well. We haven't brought on any investment capital. And so one thing when you don't bring on capital, right, you grow slower because you're playing with your own money. But I think you grow a little bit more intelligently because you are playing with your own money. And so you don't have a lot to go around. And so every dollar has to mean a little bit more versus, you get $2 million, you can just build this bloated product and maybe the market wants it, maybe they don't, And so I've found that we've had to grow more intelligent. We've had to grow slower because if you have a bunch of money, you can grow fast. But then like if you don't get product market fit, like you better hope you can pivot really quickly or you're going to be running out of cash because you've become so bloated, right? Your staff is huge and your technology is huge. And so, yeah, it's always an interesting question. I love hearing people's kind of insight into that. So I appreciate you being candid with that. So you moved from AFS to FBA. And we talked a little bit at the beginning about like why that name change came. And you also said like when you changed it, you've seen maybe a little bit of an acceleration in some of the growth. And do you pivot that a little bit or do you think that's because of the marketing and how the market views it? Or is it just this industry is now growing big enough? It's a big enough wave where there's more to be able to pull from or do you have your pulse on that at all?
Yeah. So the name change happened right in the middle of the pandemic. And I'll be very candid. Like when the pandemic happened, everybody kind of looked internally and goes, oh my God, what are we going to do? Right. Mm-hmm. How do we navigate our way through this? And a lot of businesses didn't at all, and a lot of companies went under. We saw major name health clubs, file, for bankruptcy. And so we had to, just like I'm sure you did too, look internally and go, what are we going to do here? Memberships took a dive. People were trying to figure out where they were going to spend their money. And it was just something that I always had in the back of my head based off of all the feedback and insight we were getting. We had a ton of good feedback, but there was always the feedback that would nag at me. That's, knowing that if a select few or hundreds say this, then it's actually a lot larger than that. And so the shift really was something that I had been thinking about for a long time. And when we decided to do it, we did it during the pandemic when business was quiet, but yet people needed education. They needed to figure out how to get through this. And people were looking to us as a resource, just like clients of trainers and instructors and coaches were looking to them to help them get through this from a mental health perspective. It's like, I can still train with my trainer. I can just do it through my computer now. And that never went away. Now there's all these hybrid models and stuff like that. So for us, being able to make the switch to the FBA, it's crazy when you look back. And I mentioned this at the very beginning about how sometimes in business, you just have to have luck. Mm-hmm. And right before the pandemic, in November of 2019, my developer created a completely custom virtual conference software. And we were just playing around with it. And he's like, yeah, I built this. And I think what we can do is we can bring on some of our speakers from our in-person conference and people that have done webinars and educational events for us. And we can now have this virtual conference in the cloud, virtual. And I was like, well, that's cool. Let's play with it. Maybe we'll use that as in conjunction with our in-person conference or something like that. Well, fast forward 5 months later, and we're in the midst of a pandemic. And our second in-person conference basically had to be canceled because it was going to be in April of 2020. And here we are on the hook nobody knew what the hell to do. So we're like, all right, let's do a virtual conference. We had no idea what we were doing, but we had the software to make it happen. And so we did it. And we got almost 5,000 people to attend that thing, And so ding, 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 in my mind, and we were still AFS at that time. We didn't rebrand until later in the year, early 2021. And so I thought, here's an opportunity. We have all these sponsors, all this marketing power behind us. Let's invest heavily into our virtual conference platform and figure out a way to have an amazing experience, keep the event free at the time, drive as much attendance as we possibly can, but then add in an upgrade opportunity for people to become a member of the new association, the FBA, at a nominal fee to get access to all the education, over a certain amount of time. And that's what we did. And that's kind of where we've stayed since then. And being able to really own the virtual conference space in the fitness industry, I realized, look, there are tons of in-person fitness conferences. And I always say this, I highly encourage anyone to go to any of them, to URSA, to IDEA, to SCW Mania, to Perform Better, to Athletic Business. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Go out, meet people, go in person, and I encourage it. But what the pandemic showed me and showed everybody in the industry is that virtual is here to stay. And virtual offers the ability for people to gain access to educators, connect in real time. We offer a ton of continuing education credit for it as well. It offsets the fatigue of travel, of being able to spend, a couple $1,000s to go on meals and a conference ticket and stuff like that, where you can get what you need in the comfort of your own home. It will never, ever emulate that of what an in-person conference is, and nor do we ever try to be that. We are just something now that complements what those in-person conferences do, just like virtual training does for the studio owners and the gym owners and everybody else. It's just something else for somebody to be able to access that helps fill a need. And we ultimately want to become the best virtual fitness conference in the industry because we have access to so many educators, so many sponsors that allow us the ability to market through them, and of course through our own database, to drive thousands of people to our virtual conference every year, with the ability now for people to become a member and gain access to a lot of different perks at the conference and then post-conference as well. And that's really been a key element in our growth, our rapid growth of memberships over the last year and a half.
And you've kept them free, right?
The conference?
Yeah.
Well, we did, yes. This last conference that we did a couple weeks ago, first weekend in March, was the first time that we kind of flipped it a little bit, where, again, looking at all the data, we used to do these conferences over 2-3 days. This one we shifted to 4 days, 5 days actually, Thursday through Monday. And this new model was something for which the first 2 days were free, but to unlock the rest of the conference, days 3, 4, and 5, along with a significant number of other perks, better connections with the speakers, a variety of different freebies that we'd offered in, to unlock the rest of the conferences, you had to become a member of the association. So we really put the membership front and center. Before, everything was free. And you could come in, and if you wanted to access it all on your own time, you paid. But now we switched the model a little bit and really because before it's like, yeah, you could get all this education, and oh, by the way, we'll throw in an FBA membership. So it was devaluing the membership a lot. And so we said, that's not going to work. That's not the model we want. We don't want people to be like, oh my God, I got to take all this education. And so we flipped it on its head a little bit, put the membership out in front, showcase the value that you get as a member, what comes with the membership, including access to all these sessions and a lot of other perks that the membership offers. So yeah, it was a big shift. And it's the first time we did it a few weeks ago, and it went incredibly well, but we've got even more data. We want to improve that in the future and some exciting things that we want to build into it next.
As a gym owner, Coach Catalyst is the key to having low turnover. For several years, I struggled and spent 10 to 20 hours a week communicating with clients via phone calls, Facebook Messenger, email, and text messages. I had tried everything to make my life more efficient. I was at my wit's end. And then I found Coach Catalyst. Since starting the software, I have found a life again, and my clients are thanking me for being so involved in their fitness life. I've cut my daily commitment to interacting with over 300 clients to under 15 minutes a day and have streamlined my 6-week challenges. I couldn't recommend it more. I just don't know if I would even be here today if it wasn't for Coach Catalyst. If you don't have an account already, you're missing out and not helping the people you could be.
So, I mean, my guess is, and you kind of said it, like that model crushed it compared to the previous, here's everything free. And hey, by the way, we have this membership and all this other stuff.
Right.
I mean, if you looked at like the number, not looking at exact numbers, but what was like the percentage increase? Was it like 300%, 500% uptick into people grabbing the membership?
It's 180%. Yep. It was significant. And it was really something that we didn't know if it was going to work or not. You know, I mean, one of the things that we constantly, even though we've been around for a decade, you know, it's still a new brand. You know, we're not a brand out there that people go, oh, I know who this is, you know. And one of the other things that we found was people are like, oh, this is free. You know, how good can it really be? And so being able to showcase that, like, hey, look, our educators, our speakers are people that are award-winning presenters. They are Inc. 500 company owners. They are best-selling authors. Really being able to tap into who our educators were and why it makes a difference. And of course, the feedback that we got from past attendees and the fact that it's a 98% recommended, conference for people who come and want to come back and recommend it to their friends. So having that data and that knowledge is huge, and really being able to tap into that too. So it's been monumental for us as far as the growth of the company.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's a great strategy. It positions it like in the way you want it to be. It's not just an afterthought. It is the thing, right?
Right.
And so what's the price point now for FBA?
So it's funny you should say that. We are right now, you can come into the association. It's a 6-month membership. So right now you pay anywhere from $60 to about $80 every 6 months, dependent on when somebody comes in and how they came in. So typically it's like $150 a year right now. So we're looking in the future to kind of look at the pricing model and make some significant changes to it on building in more value at higher price memberships. We're looking to build in some brand new member benefits that will have a much higher ticket price for a lot of our members, actually. So it's, as I mentioned, I'm constantly looking at the budget and playing around with numbers and forecasting. And there's a lot that we have because it's funny. I've been in business for 10 years with the AFS and now the FBA, but the FBA is still a 2-year-old company. So it's like, oh, great. I'm right back to where I was 8 years ago, with a completely new company, a completely new business model, a completely new value proposition. But knowing everything I know, it's like the question that you asked me, if I could go back in time and fix the mistakes that I did, I kind of was able to do that with the rebrand with the FBA and feel like, okay, we still have all of our great partners, but here's a model that we're now focusing on, something that we know a lot about. So now I can go and I can make changes a lot faster. Even though it's a new model, it allows me the ability to have the wherewithal and the understanding of what I've done in the past and make those changes a lot faster now to get to that success a lot faster too, which is what we're seeing.
So I'm curious about the twice a year versus once a year, right? Because I mean, you're not that far off in the price point that you guys were before, but it was once a year. Do you find being at every 6 months, you have better retention where you kind of have people renewing more frequently versus the annual model? Or was there another idea behind the biannual type pricing?
Yeah, so it was an idea I came up with where I said, look, I want to get people to upgrade to become members during the conference, but I don't think, and seeing all the data and talking to a lot of my friends in the industry and everybody who was doing a virtual model, because everybody tried to do it, it was like, oh gosh, we can't go in person. We have to go online and create something virtually. And none of them really ever, and even ours, it's not the same as in person. You just can't create that. Right. So I said, look, we can't keep our pricing model very high right now because virtual is brand new. People are still getting used to it. So I said, one of the things I want to do is have our conference multiple times a year. Instead of just doing one in-person conference a year, I want to do this virtual thing at least twice a year. We actually run 3 virtual conferences a year. So what the 6-month model was able to do was you come in for a lower price point. And I knew through our marketing partners, we could get a significant number of people coming into the association because of who we can market to and through. And so I wanted people to come in, get an understanding at a low barrier to entry of what we offer. And then ultimately from there, have them understand, look, you come in now, you're also getting our second conference later in the year. So it's building up the value for them, getting them in, romancing them while they're in so that they understand the value, they understand why it makes sense, and they understand why to continue to stay. Whether they go to the second conference a year or not, that's okay. We have so much else internally that they can access that keeps them invested, that keeps them occupied, and really just keeps them really connected to the brand in different ways. And so for us, it was just keep the barrier to entry low. And then from there, slowly increase the value that the association provides. And then as, we've seen with what's going on in the economy and stuff like that and inflation and stuff, prices will gradually go up. And we're looking already at possibly maybe going back to a one-time per year, but adding in a significant amount of value with continuing education included, with maybe a certification or an accreditation that we're looking to offer. So there's a lot more that we have planned. It's just a matter of when we introduce it and how it introduces or how it lends itself to the membership.
So have you seen, because of the rebrand into fitness business versus studio, right? Have you seen a lot of the kind of solopreneur or just like the personal trainer that's maybe, working out of someone's home or in a gym kind of taking on these memberships?
100%. So before, when we were the Association of Fitness Studios, our database, the demographics within our database was kind of like 60-40. We had 60% of our database, mainly studios and gyms and even some health clubs and stuff like that. Since we've switched the business model, it's kind of flip-flopped almost. It's like 42% and 58%, where most of our people are fitness professionals, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, virtual studios who are training out of their homes, people that, are independent contractors, but also just a ton of independently owned fitness studios and gyms and things like that as well that have jumped on board. We still have a ton of trainers and instructors and coaches as well, but that's because of who we market through in our database. But those people as well, and a lot of what we do at our conferences and through the association is not just on business. So it's not about just, how do I market? And here's retention and here's sales strategies and stuff like that. We really kind of dial it into like, here's what you need to be doing during a training session. We never really get into too much of the technical side of things. Like, here's how to build bigger biceps and stuff like that. But we do focus and still stay within or underneath our umbrella of the fitness business side. So customer service and how you talk to clients and how you engage with clients and things like that. It's still a business. You're still a business if you're a personal trainer. You're John or Jane Smith, the personal trainer who might work at a 24-hour fitness. You still are your own brand. You still got to walk, the walk and talk the talk in order for people to want to train with you. So talking through all those little elements is key. And we do some technical sessions based off whoever's going to be presented at our conferences. But I think for us, it's been nice since we've rebranded to be able to cast a wider net, but still stay true to who we are. Because as we always know, you can't cast too wide of a net because then you're nothing to a whole bunch of people. You want to be able to find your avatar, as they say, and identify who your target market is, right? Business 101. And I think we've been able to really keep that focus, even though we have been able to cast a wider net, but stay true to who the name represents and stay focused on the fitness business side of the industry.
So kind of staying with that theme, where do you see, because you have the ability to kind of get it from personal trainers, get it from studios, everyone's kind of in this net, where do you see kind of the fitness world going? Like, are there any kind of key things that are themes that are starting to come up over and over again that allow us to kind of look at the future?
Yeah, I talk about this in my session a lot, and I just did want to say the industry at our conference. There's a variety of different things. There's a focus. Automation is a huge one, being able to tap into the resources and the softwares and the technologies that really take the time and energy off of a solopreneur or an entrepreneur's plate is key. Of course, a complement to that, maybe it would be, is where AI is going in the future. Everybody's heard of ChatGPT and ChatSonic, and there's a bazillion other websites out there that can basically do the things that a copywriter you would have to pay for or a graphic designer can do. I mean, I have a laundry list of them that I'm constantly researching. As a small business owner, I look at them and be like, hey, something I used to have to pay, $700-800 a month for, $1,000 a month, 10, 12,000, I can get for $150 a month from 3 or 4 different websites. I mean, it's fantastic. So I love it. It terrifies a lot of people, but I think it's kind of cool. But, AI is absolutely the future in a variety of different ways. And then there's, just the focus on convenience, automation, mental health, recovery, without a doubt. And recovery isn't just like after the session. It's really the in-between and the post and the client connections that you have from session, in between session, during, and then the next session, and that client journey, if you will. The focus on health and wellness, I think, is a massive trend. As we all know, during the pandemic, you look at it, and because everyone's mental health took a big hit, there was a lot of focus in the news in the media about mental health and how important health and wellness is. And that has only continued. So I think it did the health and wellness industry and the fitness industry a favor, because people understood how important it was to stay active and keep active, not only physically, but mentally as well. So, the convenience factor is another one. Now that things have shifted so much virtually, that the client or the member expects convenience out of everything that they do. I mean, we're a generation of people who can get everything with a couple taps of our fingertips on our phone. So when somebody walks into your studio or your gym or wants to train with you, you got to make sure that you have something that lends itself to how it fits into their lifestyle instead of the other way around, which is kind of the archaic way that we used to do it. Used to walk into a health club and it's like, yeah, I want to take yoga. Well, that's great. We have 3 yoga classes every week. Well, 3, that doesn't really work into my schedule, right? You have to make sure that you fit into the client's schedule in a way that makes sense for them. So those are just some that I rattled off the top of my head.
That's awesome. Do you see the industry recovering? And so, I mean, COVID obviously made a big dent in the industry, right? We saw a lot of failures. We saw a lot of people going out of business, a lot of gyms going out of business. And so we're, I don't know, a year kind of removed from all of that madness. And so are you seeing the industry recover from your vantage point?
Yes, in different segments. It depends on how you want to define is the industry recovering. It's like you could look at our studios and gyms seeing people return, or our in-person conferences seeing people return to what it was pre-pandemic levels. Are people's businesses starting to get back up to where they were? They are, absolutely. But I don't think, and this is something that I know just having talked to members of ours and going to conferences, we're not at the pre-pandemic levels. We're not. We have ushered in a completely different era of the fitness industry, and we just had a presentation at our conference, which was talking about attracting the other 80% of the population. For those of you listening in, there's always been this percentage in the industry. It's the 80-20 rule, where a lot of times the fitness industry has gotten into the habit of marketing fitness to the fit. So we've always marketed to the 20% of the population that is, healthy and active and stuff like that. It's shifted a lot in recent years where on a commercial, you don't always see somebody who's super in shape, right? You see a lot of different body types, which is smart. But we had a presentation all about focusing on the 80% and how do you attract the 80%, the people that aren't working out to get into your businesses. But when you talk about a recovery, we're getting there. I think this year in talking to some of my friends in the industry, they are just about where they need to be from a revenue and a cash flow perspective, close to where they were pre-pandemic levels. I think we're at the point now where the pandemic is kind of in our rearview mirror. We're starting to get back to a sense of normalcy like we had before, but it's a new normal. I hate that word sometimes because you use it so often, right. But it really is, virtual is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. People have more options as how they get their exercise, they get their education, they get anything. I mean, it's ushered in this new wave. And I think that's what people are seeing in the industry. And you get that from a variety of different touch points. The in-person conferences don't have as many people coming back, but I think they'll slowly return to kind of where they were. Will they ultimately get back to where they were? I hope for their sakes that they do. And I think the studios and the gyms, as long as they continue doing what they're doing, I will tell you this, the businesses that were able to withstand the pandemic and create, whether it was a video channel of workouts and keep their members or their clients engaged, or the ones that were able, if they lived in warm weather climates, have their workouts outside, right, in the parking lot and stuff like that. The people that made sound business decisions and were able to make it through the pandemic, and we're seeing this in the restaurant industry too, right? Those are the ones that are getting back to normal a lot faster, And I know there was data out there that was done by IRSA that said during the pandemic, 30% of these businesses closed. And I mean, the data that we would do with all of our market research, we knew there were 100,000 fitness studios out in the United States alone. So you talk about 30% of those closing their doors, you talk about 30,000 businesses that are gone. A lot of personal trainers left the industry just because they couldn't find more clients. If their gym is closed, how are they supposed to make a living? They have nowhere to train. You can only do it virtually for so long, but it opened up a ton of new opportunities. I mean, for example, you're a trainer now. If you had a list, and I always say this in my presentation, your list is gold, because if Facebook was to shut down tomorrow, or Instagram, how would you grow your business? Well, you still have email. Hopefully Google doesn't shut down, or, Hotmail or something like that. But you still have your list. You can still market to people. You can still, train through your computer. You can still get people together on a boot camp in a park or something like that. So growing your list is ultimately going to be key. And so there's a lot of different factors as far as how to find success. And ultimately what we're seeing is people are starting to return. Things are getting back to normal. And it's just new, it's making sure that you have something for everyone these days. And the nice thing is technology has been kind of thrusted in front of us in a way that people have to step up, take notice, and integrate it into what they do.
You mentioned one of the keys being kind of an email list and having control over that. What are some of the other things that you see some of the top, whether it's personal trainers, business owners, that they're doing on a regular basis? What are the common traits among top performers in our industry?
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's service and experience. And it sounds a little cliche, but it's the truth. There are things that I see that are consistent between the best of the best. That is customer service and experiences. So I recently heard that customer service is the new battleground when it comes to fitness, because gone. I mean, we talked about benefits and features, I mean, everybody can focus on features. Hey, we've got the best personal trainers. We got the best group exercise classes. We've got the best equipment. Well, that's great. But what makes you different? It's your people. It's the experiences you provide. There is a studio owner that I know, a dear friend of mine out in California. And one of the things he does every single night, he calls it 5 minutes of kindness, where he gets on his computer or his phone and he text messages every single client he had that day and takes maybe 20 to 30 seconds, shoots them a quick text about their training session that day, what they did, how they made improvement. It's like, hey, John, just wanted to reach out. Great training session today. You held the plank today for 90 seconds. You've never held that thing longer than 60 seconds. I was really proud of you. Can't wait for your next training session a week from today. By the way, in between, make sure to do this, 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 and this. Have a great rest of the week. We'll be in touch. He does that to every single client, every single night of the week. And his retention rate and his word of mouth referrals are through the roof. Another studio owner I know, also in California, goes the extra mile every single year. I know one of the things he did was over the holidays, he created a travel workout. It was a PDF that he sent to all of his clients. I think there was 150, 200 of them, and said, hey guys, while you're traveling, you can't make it into the studio. Here's a travel workout, it's a PDF printed out. Do it while you're on vacation because I know you can't make it into the studio. That's great. He took it a step farther where he said, but what I'm going to do is before the holidays even come about, come into the studio. I'm going to teach every single one of these exercises to you. So then when you're not here, you know how to do them properly. And he held 2 group exercise classes for people to come in and understand how to do all the workouts. I mean, those are things that you can't replicate with technology and stuff like that. That is service, that is experience, and that is what is setting people apart from the rest. And, go out, do your SWOT analysis, understand what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. Do a competitive analysis on the competitors in your area. What are they doing? What aren't they doing? And figure out what they aren't doing and do it better. Own the area around where your business is. I mean, really figure out what you need to do. And it's taking the time and the energy and putting it into your business 110%. I mean, Trevor, it's not rocket science. It's hard work and perseverance,
right.
I mean, and getting an understanding and educating yourself and surrounding yourself with a network of peers that want to see you succeed. Hence, that's why you join an association. But, ultimately, that is really what it comes down to. And that's what it's all about. And I mean, it's just understanding what some of these little things are. And sometimes you wouldn't know to do some of that stuff. Well, that's what you learn, by joining an association.
Well, the one thing too, when you are smaller, right, you're a little more nimble and that's how you compete against the Lifetimes, the Equinoxes of the world, is you can provide more of that personal touch and you can provide more of that service and more of that convenience. Because you're not going to compete with them on dollars and cents. They're going to be able to outspend you on everything else, right? And so I think as a small business owner, or even as just like a solopreneur, it's just effort. Like you can win on effort versus all of the bells and whistles. And so effort is something we all have control over, which is kind of cool.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, it's effort. It's really, it comes down to experience. I mean, you walk into the studio, it's like a cruise ship and a speedboat, right? These big box clubs, if they want to make a change, so much has to go into it. It's got to go up the food chain to the CEO. You got to figure out how you're going to trickle it down. So it's like trying to do a 180 in a cruise ship as compared to like doing a 180 in a speedboat. It's like, boom. All right. If I'm a studio, here's a program I run on. Great. Let's run it this Saturday and see what happens. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or let's take some time, really dive into this and run it next month. I mean, it doesn't take all that much. And just the energy and the feeling that a studio has, or an independent gym or something like that, is, they breathe this culture that together we can accomplish anything, because their clients know they care about them and they care about, the trainers and the instructors and stuff like that. It's just this ecosystem of wanting to get better at what you do. And you have to tap into that. And that's why year over year, the way that these businesses grow their business is word of mouth referrals. I mean, that's what it is. But it's being able to understand how to do that, when to ask for referrals, when to generate the referral, how it works, the programs you can run to get more people in your door, and all that stuff. It all just kind of works cohesively to kind of grow.
I love it. This has been great. And I think you provided just like a ton of nuggets for any gym owner or personal trainer or even online coach that's listening to this, that they can take away and get the wheels turning on, like, how do I provide better service, better experience to my clients? And like, ultimately, if you're improving those things, you're going to win. So
Yeah.
this has been awesome. All right. I got some kind of rapid fire stuff that we're going to finish off with, completely unrelated to anything we've been talking about. So it's going to be kind of fun. Just a couple minutes here, just throwing some stuff at you. So let's rock and roll. Taco, burrito, or quesadilla?
Burrito.
Burrito. Quick with it. We live in Minnesota, so we don't have like the best burrito spots, but you did live in California. So
there's some good ones in Minneapolis. There's some good ones in Minneapolis.
Outside of Chipotle?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, there are.
What's your, because I could probably at some point get to one of these spots because I'm not very far away. What's one of your favorites?
Yeah. There's, there's a couple. One. El Travieso is really good on Xerxes and 50th, which is literally around the corner from where I live. And then, what's the other one that we go to all the time? Starts with a C. The name escapes me, but it's good. I can't remember what the name is.
When you think of it, text me because I'm always looking for new restaurants in the cities.
You got it.
Cool. All right. Next one we got something you purchased recently for $100 or less that's, provided a ton of value or just been awesome.
Something I purchased.
Any technology, any books, any like gadgets, anything that you've recently got that's like, oh, that makes my life a little bit easier.
What? Oh man. What have I gotten under $100 that's made my life a lot better? It's not even a gadget. This is going to sound corny, but it's this. It's my Yeti coffee mug, which honestly just makes me happy because I can pour with two young kids, 2 under 4. I rarely get the chance to sit and have my coffee. This thing was maybe $35. This thing changed my life because I can pour my coffee in this thing at like 7 o'clock in the morning and 10:30, 11 o'clock, it's still warm. That just provides me a lot of happiness knowing that I don't have to go warm it up all the time. So I wouldn't say it's a book or anything like that. It's being able to enjoy my warm coffee throughout the morning and not have to worry about warming it up.
That is one issue when you do have children. If you pour a cup of coffee in just like your regular coffee mug, right? There's a sweet spot on when coffee is like at the right temperature. And if something interrupts in that sweet spot, then it's just like, what?
I will say, on the flip side of that, I did get a gift at Christmas. Well, this Yeti mug is something I use all the time. My brother actually bought me this technology. It's a coffee cup called Ember, E-M-B-E-R. That is connected. It's an app. The coffee mug is like a regular coffee mug that charges, but it's an app that's connected to my phone that you literally can put what degree you want it to keep the coffee at the temperature. And so you pour it in and you open the app and it's like, your coffee's at 136 degrees. It's like, do you want it to be at 135 or 140 or 100? And you can just move the dial and the coffee cup warms it or cools it to what you want. It's pretty awesome. I will say, so when I'm sitting in my office, sometimes if I don't have my mug, I pour it in that thing. The problem was it doesn't keep it charged for longer than like an hour and a half. So it's still pretty cool.
Is it still ceramic or is it steel or stainless steel or what's the?
It's not a stainless steel. It's kind of like it's like a metallic. It's black. It's like a shiny metallic that I don't know what it is, but it's pretty cool. It's actually really cool.
Do you feel like it affects the taste at all?
No, not at all. Mm-mm.
Oh, I'm gonna look. I'm looking it up.
And they actually have mugs too. They have mugs as well. So something to look into. But I do like the Yeti mug because it's like just pour that thing in there and it's basically good for the day.
I love it. All right, last one. If you could have dinner with anyone past or present, who would you want to break bread with and have a conversation?
Just one person?
It could be a couple people. Like it's probably a big dinner table.
Oh gosh. I would say, Steve Jobs, I think I would love to. And they're all just, scientists, kind of big thinker. Albert Einstein, be freaking awesome. Mm-hmm. Thomas Edison, these people that just were so ahead of their time that their brains just work differently, and just being able to tap into that. And one sentimental one too. My grandparents, one of the things I always recommend to people is if you still have living grandparents, take some time with a notebook and just have them talk to you about like their history, and take some time and learn about what their childhood was like, what their teens were like, what their 20s were like. You are going to get some amazing stories. I didn't get to do that with my grandparents before they passed. But it's something that you can still access before they leave, and so I recommend people do that with your grandparents and even your parents if you wanted to too. But, for people that have passed, that's what I would say. But for those that are out there listening, you have that opportunity to do that with your current family, to really dive into, and you're going to get some amazing stories and memories and information that'll last a lifetime. So, it's a great one. And another one, this is completely off topic, but something that was told to me that I thought was a great idea. If you have kids, one of the things you should do is set up an email account for your children. They'll never access it until they're older, but set up an email account for them. And what you do is if they do something cute, or if you capture a video or a photo or a memory or something like that, email it to that email address that they have for themselves, so that when they're older, 18, 15, you determine the age, they open up their own email account and it's flooded with all these amazing memories and pictures of themselves from when they were growing up. It was a really cool idea that I wanted to pass along. So I thought that was cool.
That's awesome. I've got young kids. So my oldest is 6 and my youngest is 4. And so that's a really interesting idea. Yeah. I mean, the world we live in too, like my wife is pretty good at like documenting, she uses Instagram. And so like we'll have memories and stuff pop up, and the world of social media has been able is basically like you've gotten rid of baby books and all of that. And like, we can just go through the feed and you pretty much have like a record of your entire, really of our entire lives.
Sure.
But that's really interesting from the email thing. And it's kind of a cool, surprise. Like, hey, you go in and you never know what you're going to find with each one. Sometimes my kids will be, hey, you were a little,
send them
you
that.
weren't very nice
that's
today.
The thing.
You weren't very nice
send them
today.
that. I mean, with a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, you're kind of out of the roughest time. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Right.
And so it's like, I'm still in it, a little bit. But, yes. And that's the thing. Send them the times when they're a little, SHIT, where here's what you did. You basically screamed at me. You were a demon child for the day,
right.
And I have still bruises on my body from when you attacked me because I wouldn't give you ice cream or watch a movie that night or something like that. So yeah, send them that stuff too. Send them the good and the bad.
I love it. I love it, Josh. Hey, this has been awesome. If people want to find out a little bit more about you and about FBA, what are the good places on the internet to go? Yeah,
best place is just to our website. Go to fbafitness.com. From there, you can click up on the menu bar. There's our Succeed conference. If you wanted to go to our Succeed conference, we kind of have a in-between event season page that talks a little bit about the conference. You can see our most recent agenda. That's fbasucceed.com. But all that can be found at fbafitness.com too. Cool. We'll make sure we drop that all in the show notes. Josh, it's been awesome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate you having me on. Always a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.